This is the Sage Fixed Assets Tracking Module. The Tracking Module shares the same database as the Sage Fixed Assets Depreciation Module, so any companies you have in the Depreciation Module will also be available here in the Tracking Module. Any groups you created in the Depreciation Module are also available here in the Tracking Module. If you wanted to, for example, create an inventory list based on locations, departments, or types of assets, you have the ability to create groups based on any type of filter, and you can also use any of those groups as an inventory list, which can be sent out to multiple devices to conduct inventory. Let's take a look at an asset detail. In the asset detail, you will notice that there are the same general information fields that were available in the Depreciation Module. However, there is no access to the book fields, so users, for example, that may only have access to the Tracking Module will not be able to access book fields and make any changes that could impact depreciation. Just like in the Depreciation Module, you can customize any of these fields, rename the fields to anything you choose. Any of the fields that you previously renamed in the Depreciation Module will also show up with those new names here in the Tracking Module. In addition to the 28 fields available in the Depreciation Module, the Tracking Module adds 12 additional fields, which can be used to capture other information that may not be pertinent to users of the Depreciation Module. Of course, any of the fields that you do not wish to see or use can be hidden, just as in the Depreciation Module. Similarly, to the Depreciation Module, there is a Notes tab. You can also attach images, invoices, receipts, and so on, and it will take the same file types that are acceptable to the Depreciation Module: PDFs, JPEG, PNG, TIFF files, bitmaps, or GIF files, so it gives you tremendous flexibility. Any images or invoice you already have attached in the Depreciation Module will also be available here. In the Sage Fixed Assets Tracking Module, you have the ability to check out assets to users and also know when they're due back. Additionally, there is actually a check-in and check-out report that allows you to see what assets have been checked out and whether or not they have been returned. Let's run a check-in and check-out report to look at items checked out that are overdue. You will be able to see the tag number, what it is, who has checked it out, when it was checked out, when it was due back, and the fact that it has not been returned. You can also run this report to look at all assets that have ever been checked in or checked out. You can also see the assets that have been returned as well as the ones that have not been returned. Let's take a look at how it works. If you want to check out an asset, you can check out a single asset or go to the list view and check out multiple assets at once. If you go to the asset list view and use the Shift key, you can check out multiple assets. Let's go ahead and check out a single item to see what that process looks like. Let's check an asset out and set the expected return date. Let's say this asset will be due back on June 12th. You can enter a description to indicate why it was checked out, and you have now checked out this asset. You can run that check-in and check-out report on just the selected asset, or you can run it across all of your assets. You will see here it is going to capture the information for this particular asset: the asset ID number, the description, the date it was checked out, who it was checked out by, and the expected return date. Once that asset has been returned, you would select Check in Asset, and you can simply check it back in and can do this with any of the assets that have been checked out. Here are a few assets that have been checked out, so let's go ahead and check all of these assets back in. You will use the Shift key and select them all and check these assets in. Let's put a description in there And now all of these items have been checked in. You can now run the check-in and check-out report on those selected assets. If you need to pull up the information to see when they were previously checked out, who checked them out, and the return dates, all for today. Let's conduct a sample inventory using one of the groups created with just a smaller subset of the fixed assets. To complete an inventory, go to the Inventory selection and define that inventory, give it a name, and assign it to whoever is going to be conducting the inventory. Let's choose that group of assets for the inventory list. You can also push up to 12 fields to either a traditional scanner or the Android app. You can choose what fields you want to include. For example, if you want to include a field for who it's assigned to, but let's certainly capture things like description, department location, maybe building number, room number, and serial number. Let's prepare the reader. You can send this out to your Android app. When using a traditional scanner, you can sync your inventory list via a USB connection. Or if you're using a scanner that has the Android operating system, you can actually sync via Microsoft OneDrive. In this case, we will be sending this inventory list out to my Android phone, which it will send out via Microsoft OneDrive. Now that I've signed into my OneDrive account, that inventory list has been sent out to that device, where I can then go off-site and complete that physical inventory. Now we are on an Android device, an Android phone. Let's go into Scanner app. If you've noticed, there are two previous inventories that have been created. This one is already complete, so if you try to access it, it will indicate this inventory has been completed and has been uploaded back to the system. This inventory is in progress. Let's access and continue this inventory. It will keep track of any new assets added, what's been found of the inventory list so far, and what is not found. Let's download the inventory list where you will see the inventory sent out to the solution. Let's select and download that inventory. Let's actually go into that inventory, select the barcode scanner where you can scan. There you will see it will update the status to found. Move on to the next and continue scanning barcodes to complete this inventory. Additionally, if you need to make changes, let's say an asset is found in a different location, you can update anything that's changed, such as a different building number, room number, floor number, whatever has changed. You can save that information, and you can also take a picture of the asset while completing this inventory. Additionally, you have the ability to add assets here. So a few changes have been made to some of these. If you needed to discontinue during this inventory for any reason, you certainly can and then come back to it later. It will keep track of where you are, but let's say the inventory has been completed. Send this back to the application where you can then reconcile and accept any changes. Let's go back into the tracking module. Go into the inventory selection and select the specific inventory to review the data. Any devices that the inventory list was pushed out to will show up in this list, and you can simply click Receive to receive the inventory data. It will indicate the number of records that will be loaded. You can accept that and go in the reconciliation process, which will walk you through each of these different scenarios. Assets not found, assets found with changes, any new assets added, and assets with no changes. So first, let's look at the assets that were not found. With assets that were not found, all of these 14 items were not found because only a few were scanned for demonstration purposes. These will actually show up on the reconciliation report, which identifies assets that were not found. So in this case, there is no need to take any action here other than just apply to all, because these will actually show up on the list. Now, assets with changes. It will highlight the original data, and whatever was changed will show up in blue. It will give you both the original data and what's changed. If you change multiple, Simply accept that by clicking Apply to All. Any new assets added will show up here, as well as any assets with no changes, which you can simply click Apply to All and accept it. Once you have completed going through the reconciliation process, this is where you will actually be able to generate that reconciliation report, which would be used to identify any ghost assets. Let's run that report for that inventory list just completed. Now we have a reconciliation report that is identifying those 14 assets that were not found, which we can now take further action on by doing disposals, get them off the books, so that you're no longer overpaying on taxes or insurance for the assets that are no longer in service. It will also identify assets with no changes and anything you may have made changes to. If I added any new assets, it would also show any assets that were added. This inventory has now been completed.